Hey everybody, John Brankus here for another edition of SidePorch, where we're trying to give you as many resources as possible to deal with COVID-19. Now today, we have an incredible guest, Mark Thomas from Pittsburgh Regional Alliance. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, happy to be here.
Now, as president of Pittsburgh Regional Alliance, what is your primary duty?
Yeah, so we call it the PRA. It was formed years ago to really drive and lead business attraction and economic development for the metropolitan region of Pittsburgh. And that includes 10 counties. And so within my jurisdiction, I have a lot of the intellectual companies and robotics companies that you see there are universities. But I also have some of the more rural and outer areas that are heavy manufacturing, energy, that are also redeveloping a lot of their approaches to growth.
So you're in charge of the economic development of one of the greatest cities in the country. What's been the one thing that has surprised you the most?
So I would say, so I'm fairly new to Pittsburgh. And so I literally had just finished like my tour of my whole area before quarantine happened. And what surprised me was how excited people were that I was here. I'm not from Pittsburgh. I really hadn't spent a lot of time in the city. And I had never been to a lot of the rural areas in this part of the state. And so on my tours, people were, whether they were elected, local businesses, they put out the best red carpet and welcome mat that I could ask for. And so it's created this deeper passion of mine in making sure that we move every region, every part of my region forward. And so when COVID hit, it gives us a chance to really be more aggressive at the plan that we were already thinking about, but also adapt it to what will be the new norms moving forward.
Awesome. Now, this has been obviously a difficult time for the country. First, there's COVID, and then there's an emerging social movement that, really has exposed how this pandemic is affecting populations across the country. So what are the important takeaways from your perspective?
To some extent, you can prepare at least at a national level for a pandemic. You can't really prepare at a local level. And so I think what this has taught us is that we have to prepare to be resilient. And resiliency takes on a lot of different forms. And that is, how do we prepare our health system for a shock? How do we make sure businesses have access to capital? How do we make sure the inequities in our society aren't extreme at all, and that people have equal access to all the things that ensure safety and economic prosperity and vitality despite all things? And so it seems like the last few months have unveiled a lot of the things I thought we thought weren't a problem, and put us in a place to really be forward thinking and addressing those issues moving forward.
Is there anything that's inspired hope for you in all of the craziness that we've seen?
I would say the actual protests have inspired more hope than the virus itself. I think the virus, when it really started to wreak havoc, you heard a lot about communities of color being disproportionately impacted. You didn't really see many solutions proposed. You saw a task force and other things created. What the recent protests have done, though, have created a larger conversation on racial inequity. Obviously, the policing issues a challenge, but this sets us up to really have a deeper policy discussion, a deeper discussion regarding what is the role of governance, what is the role of economic development leaders, where can the private sector really have a voice and be impactful. And it seems like the next few months will be a different level of conversation, and we'll see more and more announcements, whether it is advocates with new agendas or governments that have new reform proposals or new initiatives they want to stand up. You'll see more announcements from the private sector on how they want to play a role and invest in this issue.
Now, your LinkedIn post of you reading your poem, A Black Man's Work, is incredibly powerful. How do you see your own responsibilities emerging during this time?
I mean, it's funny because like that poem was written when I was 21, and so I was pretty silent when the protest happened, where I didn't know really what do I say that is different from the message from our organization. But I realized I'd already written a lot and had thought a lot about like the challenges I faced and being the first to go to college in my family, and then being a pioneer for people. Um, and so there's kind of a two-pronged approach. One, I'm at a place where I feel like I can mentor a lot of the young activists and the young leaders within my own organization and within my field who really are like full of passion and fire and want to see change now. The second is what's different from where I was at 21 is I have a voice, I have access, I have a seat at the table. And so what that means is I can actually be a leader in enacting the changes and driving forward the vision and driving for the things that will make our society better. And so that gives me optimism, and I trust myself to really be thoughtful in how I contribute to advancing society.
Now, tell me about your current role at the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance. Particularly, how have you seen your fairly new community grappling with these interconnected crises?
To some extent, we started looking deeply at these issues like years ago. And if anything, we had studied a lot of the inequities within like the African American community and progress in other areas. I have 10 counties. So we also have rural parts of the region that are equally as depressed as some of our urban areas. And so we were already looking at, okay, how do we maximize the investment that flows into those communities? How do we spur greater entrepreneurship and business support systems there? And now we actually have a chance to really reset all the rules and look at what is the business climate that manages these environments? What is the role that our local governments and our counties and our industrial development authorities and all the tools that we use to drive for investment? What is their role now? And then what does the future American economy look like? And how do we get a fairer share of that? And it between what we were already studying and planning and preparing the economy to be in a position to be competitive for, plus kind of this new momentum, it positions us well to really ensure the next decade does not look like the last decade, and that we start to see progress across every aspect or marker that people would consider a step forward and being like a sustainable, resilient place.
Now, the interconnectedness of our collective communities is really strikingly apparent in these last few months. You know, whether it's local communities or regional, national, and even international. And you have a pretty unique vantage point from coast to coast. So, what are you looking at, and what has stood out to you in terms of being a great model that people should follow?
Well, it seems like we're at a place where the approach that we've taken to almost every aspect of investing in people and investing in communities and policies that drive those strategies, where people can reset the rules, right? And I don't think there's the best practice right now. I think that we're having a conversation at a national level that will force local actors like myself to really think through how do we stand up new pilots, new models, new approaches, engage, listen more, so that we can come out of this with action that people believe is real progress. And I think that's the fear. Like, people don't want to be in a place where they just felt like we protested or we talked or we published a report and nothing came out of this. And so I do sense a good pause or a little bit of nervousness, which is always a good thing, in getting it right. And in our case, that's how we're reacting. at least in Pittsburgh. And in any engagement I have with my peers in the rest of the country, they're all thinking very carefully on how did they move forward? How do we make sure we get this right? And how do we make sure that others have a seat at the table, no matter how young or old they are, so that we can shape a plan that really moves the places we are responsible for forward.
Now, how can our audience get in touch with you? You have such a unique perspective. What's your website, email, LinkedIn? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm a fan of LinkedIn. So just look me up, Mark Anthony Thomas, or on Twitter. You'll see me there, or just Google Pittsburgh Regional Alliance. I think it's an exciting moment where all of us want to engage and learn things that we didn't know, but also share. Like, I feel like I've had more conversations with friends and mentees and even my own parents about, here was my journey as a Black man in this country. And I think they see, and I have been successful. Like, I can't pretend like my last 2 decades haven't been like fulfilling in every kind of way. But along the road, you have many challenges that you have to conquer, and you have to somewhat learn how to thrive amidst some of the systematic challenges that people of color face. And despite that, people will see like a positive story, an encouraging story. And so I want to be accessible to really talk and learn and comprehensively just be better and contribute to the betterment of everything that's going on.
So, Mark, if there's one thought you can leave our audience with, what would that be?
The world needs leadership right now. And it's not a critique of kind of all of us who currently have a leadership role, but in every position, whether you're an activist, whether you're a philanthropist, a business leader, if you're an HR leader, whatever your capacity is, really look at where you can make a difference. And what I find in the civic space, there's a role for all of us to play. And whether it's volunteering or providing technical assistance or providing expertise, and this is really that moment to step forward to do something.
Well, listen, Mark, I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts. You're doing incredible work.
Thank you.
I encourage everyone to get in touch with Mark and follow up. You know, it's incredibly important during this time to make sure that you are tapping into all the resources that you have at your disposal. And Mark has been gracious enough to provide you with his social media information and to do this interview. And we really can't thank you enough, Mark.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.